Well, time is a fascinating concept, and I start out talking about it in Becoming Supernatural. But we only experience time when there's a separation between 2 points of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm here in my present body, and then there's somebody over there, and I experience separation from them because they're material and I'm material, and my senses tell me that I'm here and they're there.
Mm-hmm.
There's me in the present moment, and then there's my future and my dreams. And that future seems separate from me because I experience time as linear. Here's 1 point of consciousness. I'm sitting here, and then there's the toilet in the other room, or the kitchen in the other room, and that's another point of consciousness. So the moment I become aware that I want to go to the kitchen and to the refrigerator, I have a separation between 2 points of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So that when I drag my body through space and go from 1 point of consciousness to another point of consciousness, we experience time in a linear way.
Mm-hmm.
So we've just been conditioned to believe that time is linear because we believe that we're bodies living in space and time. But in the quantum, that's not how it is at all. The quantum is the unified field. In the unified field, there is no separation. Everything is connected in a realm beyond space and time. So in that realm, there is no separation, so you have an infinite amount of time. And if you have an infinite amount of time, then you have a lot of things you can do in all the time you need in the world. So you have an infinite number of possibilities that exist in the eternal present moment. And all of a sudden, then time is inversed. In other words, you experience, when you move through time, you experience spaces or dimensions.
Right.
So the only way you move through time is not from moving faster from 1 point of consciousness to another, like moving your body. It turns into be frequencies. So as you change your frequency, you've changed your vibration. All frequency carries information, and all of a sudden you're experiencing another dimension, another reality, another possibility. And there just happens to be infinite number of those. In quantum physics, it's called the many worlds theory. Mm-hmm. There's just infinite possibilities. So I've done my best in being able to describe the distinction between space and time and space. Well, I started to ask the question, if I'm having a very profound mystical experience. Now, I'm not talking about having a dream. I'm talking about having a full-on sensory experience without your senses. Mm-hmm. So imagine if your senses were heightened right now by 25%. Everything you were seeing, everything you were hearing, everything you were smelling, tasting, and feeling. If your senses are heightened, your awareness of where you are is also heightened. Mm-hmm. Yes or no?
Yes.
And consciousness is awareness. So when there's a change in awareness, there's a change in consciousness. And you can't have consciousness without energy. So all of a sudden, the brain starts processing greater frequencies and greater energy. And so you're having that mystical moment. What is the biological system that's taking information from the field that's not coming from your memory bank?
Right.
What is it that's transducing, taking information and turning it into such vivid imagery?
Right.
Just because I had read an article probably a couple years before that just kind of caused me to wonder about it, and ran into a researcher, a biophysicist, friend of mine, and I was a editorial advisor for a magazine, scientific magazine, and he said, "Oh, you should check out this one researcher." So I checked out this researcher, and he was one of the few rigorous researchers that had done such extensive work on the pineal gland. Now, every one of those centers in our body are centers of information. Mm-hmm. When you focus on your heart, you're going to feel gratitude and love, and your energy is going to expand, and you're going to be more selfless, and there's a whole consciousness that goes along with it. But as you climb up the body and you get to the pineal gland kind of caught my attention because there were so many weird things about it that I wanted to be able to piece together. So turns out that the pineal gland acts kind of like a cosmic antenna that allows us to tune in to different frequencies. And the pineal gland has tiny little crystals in it that are calcium carbonate crystals. They call them calcite crystals that are stacked up on top of each other. And I found an article after that experience that said that the pineal gland was a neuroendocrine transducer with piezoelectric effects. Now, most people would just go like, forget that. But
Yeah.
I knew that piezoelectric meant taking one form of energy and turning it into another form of energy. So when the crystals of the pineal gland are compressed, the compression of the crystals takes a mechanical stress and turns it into an electrical charge. And so the pineal gland all of a sudden becomes activated. That electrical charge begins to produce a resonant electromagnetic field. So I was like, okay, so how do you compress the crystals of the pineal gland? And there are certain yoga breaths in yoga that I learned that I kind of modified and created that allow us to begin to inhale and pull this energy, this fluid up our spine, and then squeeze our intrinsic muscles and just hold it for a period of time, begins to push that cerebral spinal fluid up into the brain, and the pineal gland sits right at the back of the third ventricle. And the compression of the crystals, by holding your breath and squeezing, begins to activate the gland. So when the gland gets activated, all of a sudden energy from the lower centers from the body begins to be released into the brain. And the brain goes into gamma brainwave patterns, a super aroused state. Now, in the last 5 years, I've been doing extensive scientific research, as you know, in our advanced workshops. We've done 19 advanced workshops, and we have probably close to 10,000 brain scans.
Wow.
And I now know that when that energy starts to move, when the person's doing this properly, the imagery that we see is the pineal gland and the surrounding area is very, very active, a lot of energy there. And the energy is not coming from something outside, like through the senses. The arousal that's created is coming from the body. There's a release of energy from the body to the brain, and the entire limbic brain is on fire. Once the brain goes on fire, then the brain goes into high gamma brainwave patterns, and the person literally is super conscious. So we've actually proven at this point that this is the system that takes place, and this is a system that becomes activated when done properly. And the person then has a profound subjective experience that we could say, oh, that's probably very real, because they can't make their brain do that.
Right.
Now, the amount of energy that we've captured in the brain in our research is over 200 times normal. You never even see it in clinical studies.
Right.
There's so much energy in the brain that 99.7% of the population fall in 3 standard deviations above normal or 3 standard deviations below normal. It's a bell curve. And that makes up almost 100% of the population. Imagine we're capturing 200 and 300 standard deviations above normal. So we're talking about an enormous amount of energy. So my hypothesis then of the pineal gland, we've actually proven to be true. And so I show certain brain scans in the book to show exactly what happens. So then it's a neuroendocrine transducer. And a transducer is what takes one form of energy and translates it into another form of communication, like our Skype call here.
Right.
We're picking up the computer's picking up a frequency and turning it into a picture. Your television antenna picks up a wave from the environment and turns it into a very coherent picture. Well, the pineal gland acts as a transducer, and it picks up information from the realm beyond space and time. And that imagery then is transduced into very powerful pictures. And it's the metabolites of the pineal gland that create such a profound inner vision. That's why it's called the third eye. You're having an inner vision, and that inner vision is blowing your mind because it's way bigger than anything you've ever experienced and more real than anything you've ever experienced in your past external environment. And since experience enriches the brain, and it does, and since experience produces a profound emotion, right in that moment, that person's creating a long-term memory. And they're wiring their brain, and they're sending a new emotional, chemical, energetic signal to their body. And we could say in 1 second, the past is being washed away. And when they come back to their senses, now they have more circuits in their brain in place, and it seems like some veil, some conditioning about our limitation is removed, and we see a broader spectrum of reality, because now we have the circuits in place to perceive what's always been there, but we didn't have the wiring in our brain to perceive it, because we don't perceive things how they are, we perceive things how we are. So the brain gets a neurological and biological, and the body gets a neurochemical genetic upgrade. It makes sense then that you're going to see more of reality the way it is.